Hello and welcome to The Great Shift. On The Great Shift, we love to talk about the shift in consciousness on the planet and how we are going to remake just about every institution, policy, and organization. And today we have Marissa Loewen, who is a dear friend of mine, and she is going to talk to us about changing the face of business. And Marissa is a business strategist, community catalyst, and communicator with a multi-passionate focus. Her company, Create the Rules, uses coaching, mentoring, and storytelling to help business owners ask the question, what would make this even better? Focusing on nurturing the business owner and the business, Marissa is a chief nourishment officer to leaders, entrepreneurs, and radical change makers. She's also the owner and show manager of On the Spot Pop-Ups, a temporary retail shop and art gallery, focusing on placemaking and helping artists and creatives elevate local brands to the global economy. And welcome, Marissa. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And what spurred this conversation is a pretty extraordinary conference that you have coming up at the end of the month. And I'd love you to tell us about that and why you came up with it and what you're going to be covering in it.
Yeah. So last year we started a conference called Spring, and we really focused on, pivoting, resiliency, all of those things that we kind of needed as business owners as we were suddenly entering into, I think it was like the third or fourth month of the pandemic crawling across the world. And we're kind of realizing that business was changing. This year, when we looked at it, I really thought, okay, we could do something different. And had it been a year where I really pulled back from listening to a lot of what I would call like the celebrity entrepreneurs and really kind of going back into what I knew about business. And I started to hear from different people. When I pulled away from, I would say, the mainstream, I started hearing what people were doing in the world to not only grow their business during a time when everything was slowing down, but also just these new ideas that were emerging about creating thriving, profitable businesses in a post-colonial capitalist economy. And I know some people might go, oh no, we're going to talk about anti-capitalism. And, one of the things that we want to look at is how do we actually create thriving practices for all businesses? How do we create accessibility for all business owners, regardless of where they are in the world, regardless of, their socioeconomic factors against them? How do we remove the barriers and start creating new ways and new normalizations of how businesses run so that it takes care of people, so that it nourishes people? We don't want to burn out. We don't want to be exhausted. I always say that, we are in a billions and billions of dollar industry where we force people to be burnt out and exhausted before they can get help. How do we change that? How do we start to normalize getting supported, being supported, creating these communities of support and nourishment so that we can build businesses and we can build incredible lives alongside that? So I thought, okay, I want to hear from different people, and I want to hear from people who really are not prescribing the norm in business, that kind of, we just got to get prospects and leads and close sales. I wanted to look at who people were creating change, who were creating a legacy for themselves and doing that in a way that they felt really good about, and that their employees felt really good about, and their clients felt really good about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years, and the biggest problem I always had was the marketing. And I remember I went to, various seminars and so on, and the language absolutely repelled me, right? Because it was dehumanizing our clients, right? And treating them as though they were marks, right? Prospects.
Yeah.
And it became this really gross situation where we're trying to actually hurt the people, right? Find their pain points and poke them. And this is the way that you get clients. So I'd love you to address that, because that was repulsive to me.
Yeah, pain point marketing is not my favorite. I look at outcome or opportunity based marketing, and it has similar things. I mean, you're still solving a problem for a person or you're offering an opportunity. But what it does is it actually just helps them make the best buying decision as opposed to just buying your thing. So there's certain things in persuasion where you don't want them to look at competition, you don't want them to compare, you don't want them. No, I want them to have the best solution. I don't want them to just pick my product or service because I had the best marketing or ad campaign. I want them to actually be truly happy. I want them to truly use that product or service because then they're going to tell other people. Getting the money in the bank is not cutting it anymore. And when I look at like what capitalization does, I love the ideas of like free market where people can go and create their own idea and charge what they want. I love that. I love that we get to actually decide who we want to work with. But what I don't like about it is the expense at who, like the expense of either the people who are working for us or who are creating the products that we're selling, or at the expense of our customers and clients who have just bought because they feel like they have to, the fear of missing out, that kind of like scarcity model, all of that kind of stuff really bugs me. Not to say that we don't work along those lines too. I work with a lot of makers and artists. And when we look at scarcity, it's because they have the ability to create this one of a kind piece of art that will never be replicated. It might be tried, but this particular piece will then charge for that, charge for the amount of time,
Right.
charge for the skill, charge for all the failed experiments that you had to do before you got to this one piece. Absolutely. That's the kind of scarcity that I enjoy because we celebrate creativity and uniqueness. But these kind of like, get it before it's gone and all this kind of stuff that we put out there, it really is harmful. And what it does is we just consume without that intentional need. And I think
Mhm.
that's where we're getting to the world. Like we just don't need more stuff.
Mhm.
It's going to do us really, some good that's going to actually benefit us, or it actually makes our life even better.
Yeah, the worst of that kind of marketing is where people are openly talking about psychological manipulation and putting people into a position where they feel desperate and they feel as though this is the only person who can solve their problem. And that just, it felt so awful to me to do that.
Yeah, and it's not to say that I haven't purchased things on that where I'm like, I got to get it before anyone else, or I've done that, I've fallen that, but I don't even want to do that in my life anymore. Like I want to actually think about things, even when new technology comes out. I like to wait. I like to see what happens. I like to see if there's even something better coming along. So even though I love tech and I love new shiny things, I've really even slowed down in my life of just how much accumulation I really.
Mm,
But when it comes to things like services and support and nourishment, I actually am increasing that because I want to be supported. I don't want to burn out. I don't want to exhaust myself. One of the things that I've always found really poignant was a friend of mine was going through massage therapy school a few years ago. And she said, what's really disheartening is my teacher said that we've only got like maybe a 12-year lifespan, maybe
mhm,
less, before our body starts to feel the effects of it. And I
mhm,
started thinking about like therapists who burn out. I started thinking about other healthcare practitioners, that it does have an effect not only on their mind but their body as well. And that's because we wait, right? So if we were actually getting massages on a regular basis, our muscles would be limber, we would have elasticity in them, we would be able to like move more. But we don't. We wait till we're in pain to go seek
right.
out that massage. And then our massage therapist is literally working on these rock hard clenched muscles. That's what
Mhm,
causes that physical harm to them. Same with
mhm,
our therapist. Same with, like if we go in, imagine like if, your therapist is really working on keeping you not only, good, but even better, right?
mhm,
Imagine what that does to their outcome. So all of this has this ripple effect into the world. And I think this is where we're seeing the effects of this long-term forcing of people to wait until they're supported and nourished, instead of encouraging that they get support, that they ask for help, that they receive help, that they know how to receive help when it's offered to them, and they don't feel like they're a burden, or they don't feel like they are compromising their standing or how well they look. And I think this is really imperative in the business world because we're not always going to get it right. We're not always going to have a success. Doesn't matter if we've been in business 3 months, 3 years, 30 years, there's going to be times where we need help. And I think when we look at the stats of businesses in North America in particular, and how long, the stats between the years 3 and 5, where you've got like, 50% of businesses failing, between 5 and 10, all of those businesses that started are now we're looking at 75%. Like these are startling numbers
Mhm.
when we look at that. And so it's like, how do we start to create this, again, normalizing support and nourishment for
Mhm.
business owners? And that starts with our marketing. It
Yeah.
starts with how the language that we use. We're no longer catering. Like, yes, you can still work with people who are tired out and burnt out. That's a legit thing, but
Mhm.
speak to them before they get to that point.
Mhm.
That's not the pain point we should be talking about. We
Yeah.
should actually be talking to the pain point of not knowing how to ask for help, of not
Mm.
normalizing support when things are amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the system creates a situation where people are desperate and easily manipulable,
But they
right?
can charge more. They can charge more because people are in that fight or flight and they don't
Hmm.
have the ability or the space to fully make an informed decision for themselves. When they're in panic mode and burnt out, the first message that looks like a life raft, they're grabbing a hold on it, and they're not seeing what that boat is attached to, or what that life raft is attached to, right? They could be in a worse boat. And so I think this is where we have to start thinking and giving people that opportunity, getting out of that competition mindset, and actually encouraging people that you do speak to not only make the best decision for themselves, but to
Hmm.
do the research. And it's okay because, 7 billion people in the world, 3.5 billion people actively on social media, purchasing and buying. Those are stats from a couple of years ago, but I don't think they've changed too much. There's an opportunity for everyone. And I wouldn't say that any industry in particular is saturated at any given time. There's going to be ebbs and flows, but your ability to find customers is always there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no shortage of people who need our help.
Mhm.
And the thing is that we are shifting away from this model of hierarchy, right? Which is what competition is. I'm better than the other people, right? And we're all scrambling to the top to be the
Yes.
guru. And the way that I look at it is that we're shifting to a horizontal model, right?
Mhm.
Where we are all participating, we're sharing, we're assisting each other,
Yeah.
right? And that's the shift that needs to take place in every institution, right?
Yeah, we really saw it when we first started doing our craft shows, our big scale where we had 200, 250 plus vendors in a 36,000 square foot hall. Now you're at that amount, you're going to have 20 plus jewelry designers, you're going to have 20 plus clothing designers, you're going to have 20 plus crochet artists. But what people like when we first moved into that, people say, "Oh, I'm too close to the other crochet artists." I'm like, "You're not." First of all, these are really wide aisles, but second of all, what this does, what I'd love to do if I wasn't completely plagued by competition, is I'd actually put all of the crochet artists in one aisle,
Right.
all of the jewelry artists in one aisle, and they would actually see an increase in their an intake in their sales,
Yeah.
because people are able to make a more informed decision. What happens in that craft sale is we wander through all the aisles, we think, oh, I'm going to go back and buy that necklace, but you don't. You
Mhm.
really don't, right? Because you go, oh, I got to go back to all those aisles. So if you had it all in one place, they'd stop there and make their decision there before moving on. But we had people who complained, and I said, just play with it and just see what I think you're going to be fine. And at the end of the first day, they're like, we were more than fine. In fact, we found out that we could actually play off the other crochet artists. She does dolls, we do animals,
Yeah.
we have similar colors. And so people would buy a doll at hers, and then she'd say, there's a matching puppy just down the aisle. Well,
That's
why wouldn't you?
awesome.
Right. And so then we saw, as they shared those stories, we saw the shows evolve, and we saw makers doing more collaborations. We saw them making products together, offering bundle products. So you didn't feel the need to expand your product line to meet all the needs. You partnered with people who had that focus already, and then you created something that you both could benefit from. And that's the world I want to see. And that's why I'm trying to create these opportunities, these conferences where we come together. It's not a pre-recorded summit. Yes, there are recordings available so you can go and see the sessions you missed, but the idea is to come together with a group of people who are interested in that subject at that time and work with each other to create solutions, for
Mhm.
yourself and for your business, and to be able to respond real time and to see other people's faces and to network and find those collaborations that maybe you didn't know were possible in your business. We
Mhm.
spend so much time trying to do things for ourselves when we could be doing stuff for each other.
Absolutely. And that's an exciting world that you put forward. I love that thing about the crochet artists because also they have similar interests. They should be friends, right? They
And
shouldn't
they
be fighting.
should. Yeah, but at first it was, again, it's just that competition space, right?
Yeah,
And even the other craft show organizers encourage that, where they say, well, we only have one or two of each kind. And I'm
right.
like, nah. Like, I mean, you don't want to have, like, if you only got 20 makers in a space, you don't want to have 12 crochet people and then like no other products.
Yeah.
But the idea is that you can work together and collaborate even before the event, do specials, show, do advertising, create, show specific offers that work together. And we're seeing that in this conference as well. Some of the groups are working together, looking at, oh, hey, maybe actually we could create an offer together that we could put out for the show. And I think that's awesome. Like, this is the opportunity where you can build business, increase opportunities for yourself, but also not extend yourself. And like I said, there's this thing that kind of goes around where business owners are like, I have to have this and this and this and this. You see them, they have like 20 different courses and they're all these different topics. And I'm like, which one do you love the most? And they'll be like, whatever one people buy. I'm like, no. Like, find what you're good at, find what that is, and keep repeating it over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And then, then once you get really good at that, then add something else. And
Mm-hmm.
you know what? You might find that someone else is doing something even better and you want to work with them. And then you're both working in your lane
Yeah,
and you're not
absolutely.
overextending yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, because the competition thing, I mean, I've fallen into this myself. When I first started online about 10 years ago, I was so externally focused, right? Because that was the marketing that was being taught at that point, that I was acting from what I thought people wanted, right? Rather than what I cared about. And ultimately, it's going to be very unsatisfying if you are doing it because it's just what other people want, rather than what your purpose, right, in life is. That's when it gets exciting, and that's when you naturally attract people to
Yeah.
you because you become magnetic.
Yeah, and you become excited about what you're doing and you get the chance to repeat things over and over again. I mean, this is the one thing about marketing, and I still forget it myself in my own stuff, but I'll say this to anyone who's listening. You have to get used to repeating yourself. You have to get used to hearing the same story or the same key messages over and
Mhm.
over again, because and don't think that your clients are going to get tired of hearing it.
Mhm.
They don't hear it the first, the third, the eighth time. They don't hear it every time.
Mhm.
And the idea is that you actually get better at telling it in different ways so that different people get to experience it, they get the perspective. You find other people to tell a similar story so that other people find that reflection in it and see their reflection or their similarities, their representation, and you
Mhm.
get really good at changing that story. I found it really interesting one year. So I always say I accidentally kind of went to the top of a direct sales company. Very accidental, never intended it. As a result of that, though, I got to meet one of the Dragon's Den, or like they're the Shark Tank, but in Canada it's called Dragon's Den. And he wrote this book called, I think, oh, and his name's David Chilton, and it was like something like what the barber's son knew, or something. It was something like that. Anyways, every time, so in the course of a year, through both my work with the company, the direct sales company, and I was at an alumni event for my college. I was at another entrepreneurs event through the year, and he was there as a speaker. Through that time, it was like 1 year, I heard him speak about 6 times.
Yeah.
Out of his 5 or 6 stories that he shared, 3 of them were the same. And it was funny because after the fifth time, sixth time I heard him, I was like, I started to smile when I heard this one story. And then I realized I was picking up different things from that story
Yeah.
that impacted me depending on where I was at in my
Mhm.
journey that year.
Yeah.
And when I started looking back, I went back to my notes from each of those other events and I
Mhm.
wrote down what was the thing that I wrote from his talk that was different, and each one was different. Each one had a
Mhm.
different point that I had pulled out of that same 5 minute talk, and he's repeated it how many times throughout the year,
Mhm.
right? I just happened to be in a space where I saw him that many times, and it fully clicked to me. I'm like, that's how many times it took for me to actually fully get his story and his method and for what he was doing and what it meant to me at different times of my life.
Yeah, that is such a big deal because I noticed that too. A few years ago, I was following certain spiritual leaders, and I said to myself, these people are telling the same story over and over again, but I'm not getting tired of it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with my neurodiversity and everything, I think that I always have to have something new, right? Which is it's actually the opposite of what you should be doing for your mental health, right?
Yeah. I mean, nobody's tired of hearing Bob Proctor say thoughts become things. And how many times he's been saying that for the last like 40, 50 years. Right. And and even when you say that to people like that, he said that, I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
and it's become this commonplace thing in our system. And it's just because he's said it a bazillion times in a
Right.
bazillion different ways. And then other people take it and then they say it and they say it and they say it. So if you want to create change, if you want to, I mean, both benefit yourself and your business, but if you're creating change in the world, if you really want to create that lasting change, get really good at repeating something over and over again, and then being
Yeah.
able to measure it, right? That's actually really great for your business, because you're like, okay, at the end of the year, these are my 3 or 4 key messages that I want people to know about me, my business, and my message. At the end of the year and the end of 12 months, if I went to anybody in my audience, would they be able to say those 3 or 4 key messages or the gist of it back to me? Then you've done it. If at the end of the year you ask somebody, what's a phrase that you associate with me, or what would you say I do? And they're not answering those 3 or 4 key messages, you didn't repeat it enough.
That's awesome. I just absolutely love that. Well, I mean, what would you say to entrepreneurs who haven't found that core, right? How do you drill down to that? Because so often we're looking at, for instance, in the spiritual realm where I am, we look at other people and we say, oh, well, if I'm going to be a spiritual leader, then I need to wear all these malas and I need to look a certain way, right? And we try to fit ourselves into that niche. But how do you step back from that and go to the core of yourself and say, oh, what is my underlying message that is behind everything that I do? Do
Yeah.
you have methods that you use with your
Yeah.
clients for that?
Yeah, record yourself. Record
Mm,
yourself talking in the car while you're driving. Record yourself while you're talking or singing to yourself in the shower. Record yourself when you're having a conversation with your client. Record yourself when you are talking, like just be like, say to friends, like, I'm just going to record this. It's no big deal. I just want to hear what the things I say. And what you'll do is you'll start to find, and I use now that otter.ai is like so easy and free to use, like put it in otter.ai and see if the words, go start looking at the words and how much phrases you use, keep track of those and see
mhm.
how you feel about it. That's how my brand, the Create the Rules, came about. I always kept saying, like, it's kind of a joke, like, yeah, you got to create the rules. Like, people are like, wait, I can do this differently. I'm like, yeah, you create the rules. Like, it just became this thing. And then people started repeating it, and then it became a hashtag. And then I'm like, actually, this is my brand, Create the Rules. Everything I believe is under this.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and that, like, another one that came out recently, and I did it accidentally again, was Nourish the Risk Takers. And I kept saying, like, we got to nourish the risk takers. Like, the risk takers are out here and they've got the idea. They're putting their entire business, their money, their everything on the line. And
Mhm,
if one thing goes wrong, nobody's there coming and helping them pick up the slack. They have to
mhm,
take all of the financial burden of it. A friend of mine ran an event and she was subleasing a space very similar to like a craft, like it was a joint store, okay, for crafters. And her sublease ended without her knowing. Like, basically they were like, we're the organization she was working with was like, we're pulling our lease, we're not going through for our full length of our contract, thanks for everything, goodbye. And so she said to the makers, like, we've got 2 weeks, like, they cut us off, we don't have that space anymore, come get your stuff, and then, like, I'll pay you out. And they were like, well, we want a refund on our fee. So even though they made a ton of money, and more money than they would have if they didn't have this opportunity given to them, they were upset at her.
mhm.
And I'm like, and she's like, I don't know what to do. If I refund them, I will not be able to do this again. I will not be able to go on to the next project.
Right.
And I said, then you have to tell them that. We have to tell them that. We have to let them know that you're the risk taker, and
Mhm,
them nourishing you means there's another opportunity coming down the line, because you're the one that's willing to take that on and organize it and create that opportunity. And she's
mhm.
like, oh, the risk taker. And I was like, yeah, we have to nourish the risk taker. And then I started saying it, and we did a, webinar on it, and people were like, what is this? What do you mean by this? I'm like, it's the person who has the idea, the person who's willing to put everything, their savings, everything in it to start the idea, to benefit another group of people. And that group of people has to recognize that they're doing it for them. And if we don't nourish the risk taker back, there isn't going to be another opportunity. We have to do it. And then we have to normalize society and our communities and our governments to start, supporting the risk
Yeah.
takers, to nourish these idea creators and these catalysts. Otherwise, we aren't going to have the change we want in the world. We just are not. So again, I said it over and over again. I started recording myself. I started kind of going in Facebook lives, and I found myself saying this over and over again. And that became something that people started to associate with me.
Mm. And it just really hits me right in the heart, because that's why I'm an entrepreneur, and I've always been out in front taking the risks. And it's always been like doing everything without a net. And that
Mhm.
just feels so much of a relief that this is, being addressed. Right?
Yeah.
Because we need the innovators, right? We need the creatives. We need the people who are out there leading the way. And this is what I tell my clients, is that one of the reasons that this is so challenging is because nobody's ever done it before, right? We're creating the rules. We're creating something brand new, right? And so I just love that you have identified that, and because that allows us to do something about it.
Yeah, I think once we realize that we've spent some time maybe trying to copy somebody else's methods and apply it, I always think of it like ideas are like a pair of pants. Like we go into like the store and there's 30 different styles of pants. And you know what happens? Like we saw pants that look good on someone else. So we're like, I'm going to get me a pair of those pants. And you try them on and they're not right for you. And you're like, this is it's fine. It's fine. I'll figure it out. And then you're uncomfortable and you don't look good because you're walking like a duck. You're like literally waddling. So I always say, like, when you get an idea, think about that pair of pants, try it on, do some stretches, squat, run a little bit, stretch it out. If it doesn't feel good, assess this. Either it's the wrong pair of pants and you have to take them off entirely and try on a different pair of pants, or maybe you just need to tailor some of it. Like, you put on that pair of pants and it's so comfy and it fits so good and your butt looks amazing, but all of a sudden there is that flap at the back because maybe your butt's a little bit bigger than your waist. And so you're like, okay, I don't know if I can live my life having that flap out the back. Go to a tailor. That's where you go to the strategist. That's where you go to the expert, the coach, and you get it to tailor that idea so that it fits you and your business. And I think we don't do that enough. So we either are trying on pants that don't fit and will never fit. And even if you did try to tailor it, it's just going to look horrible on you. Or we're not actually tailoring it so that it fits our business.
Well, I mean, one of the problems is that many creatives, it's almost, we have to learn two businesses, because not only are we creating, we also have to learn to market. And, in the past, when I looked at the way that other people were marketing, it was painful. But to me, your kind of marketing is much more natural, right? And easy.
Yeah, and I think I've heard that recently a lot. Actually, people can say, "Oh, I love your marketing," and I hadn't really thought about it because I just talk about it, right? I just
Right.
talk about the things I do. I was in Clubhouse a couple months ago, and I realized how I do this. I was sharing. Somebody was talking about systems and processes, and I said, "Well, I'll tell you something. I waited 6 years to use the wrong calendar link. Like, what was I doing?" So this morning, I was testing out new calendar links, and I wanted to create this like really quick offer for people to have a 3-hour work session with me. And I was able to create this workflow, and it's really cool because then I get this follow up and this update. And everyone was like, what's this 3-hour work session with you? I was like, oh, I thought like a little container. You got an idea, you got a project, you have a sales funnel, you have a landing page, something that you just want to bang out. You can just book 3 hours with me and we can get it done. And people were like, and what's the link for that? I'm like, oh, here. And I didn't even think about it.
Mhm.
Right. But I was like totally just sharing, like I wasn't there to sell it. I
Right.
was just saying, like, here's a great opportunity where you can learn. Don't go 6 years in a painful calendar just because you don't want to change out all of your links. Like, find the solution that works for you, right? And that was it. And so I started thinking about that, and I'm like, yeah, we're not doing enough of that, sharing that experience. And I think part of it is because I mean, if you spend any time on social media, particularly Facebook, you are often told not to talk about your business. Don't be so spammy. Don't talk, don't say enough. Don't drop links. All of these rules about how you talk about what you're passionate about. It was getting so bad in some of these Facebook groups where you couldn't even share that you were featured in a major publication because it was called self-promotion. And I'm thinking, we are small businesses. Do you go over to the coffee shop who has a sign on their sidewalk that advertises their muffin of the day, kick the sign and say, don't you dare talk about your muffins to me? No, nobody, I mean, they might be, but we're not, like, it's not the norm. But yet here it is in the norm when you have small businesses, single owners, solopreneurs, all of these kind of phrases who are going out there and starting an idea and starting some sort of movement. And we're telling them not to talk about themselves because it's self-promoting. No, let's
Mm,
talk about it. Let's talk about everything about it. And that's where we start to get some of that uncomfortableness out of there too, that sleaze, that kind of like that, prospects. It becomes actually about the business owner. And I think we've
mhm,
forgotten that. Even you hear people who say, in your about page, you shouldn't talk about you. You should talk about the client and their needs. You know what that is? That's manipulative marketing. When I
mm,
go to an about page, I want to learn about Lisa. I want to learn everything about you. I want to learn like what you find, like funny on, movies. I want to know what your favorite quote is. I already know about me. I want to know who you are as a practitioner. And that goes for like, if I hire a plumber, if I hire, like, that doesn't even matter. I want to go and see who that person is
mhm.
and see if I can trust them and see if they're like fun to be around. We have to get back to that. And I know that
Absolutely.
it seems like a struggle because you have these guys out here with their Lamborghinis talking about all their money they made. That's not getting to know them. That's
Mhm,
getting to know this like fake reality that doesn't actually exist.
mhm.
I want to know, what do you put on your popcorn topping on at the movie theater? Like, are you a dill? Are you just butter? Are you like nothing? Like, I want to know that kind of stuff because it's fun and it actually gives me an idea of who you are. That's connection and
Mhm,
that's collaboration. Then we start to see where we fit together. And maybe there's something I might use your services now, but maybe in the future we create something together.
mhm. That's beautiful. Yeah, because I actually felt as though we needed to hide certain parts of ourselves, right, with this marketing, right? Especially a few years ago when the Instagram influencers were
Oh, of
really, really
course.
big and it was, just this whole fake thing going on. Yeah.
No, and I'm out here like, it's so funny because this week I was like, I need help. I'm trying to do all the things right now for this conference and I need help. Who can help me talk about this conference? And I had one person said, they messaged me and they're like, that's really brave of you to like say that you don't have it all together. I'm like, none of us have it all together. Like, none of us. I'm like, some of us can afford more bigger teams and some of us can't. That's all that is.
Right.
You can't tell me that the Warren Buffetts of the world, like, they don't got it all together. If they were in my exact position right now, they wouldn't be, they'd be like, I need some help. This is a lot of work. So what you're doing is you're setting this unfair expectation that
Mhm,
people with lots of teams have it together, and somebody who is just starting out or someone who is just creating a new initiative and hasn't figured out all the answers is not worthy of your time. And that's not true. We
mm,
need to start investing in people with new ideas. We need to start investing in people who have a new way of doing it and trying it out. And in order for us to do that, we have to create thriving lives and businesses that allow us to have that income where we can start investing in other people. And this
mhm,
is where that time changes, because then we're not keeping the power and the money in a select few who just happen to have those instances that allowed them to create that for themselves. We are
mm.
looking at how we redistribute help, support, money, wealth, legacy to
Yeah.
everyone. And that's the shift.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. Well, would you like to tell us about some of the guests that you have, some of the speakers that you have at the conference?
Yeah, I mean, we have such a diverse range. I was actually talking about this morning about how I was so excited that there are three people who are focusing on team building and team expansion and team, even diversity and accessibility. We have Faith Clark, Sandy Broaddus, and M. Angelique Lucas, and they're focusing on very different aspects of team building. Sandy Broaddus is an incredible lawyer, advocate, abolitionist. I mean, I always get that wrong, for racism. She is an incredible woman. She is coming to the conference to talk about microaggressions and how it can affect the team dynamics and the strength. Faith Clark is looking on creating accessibility and inclusion in your teams, and not just, and I love her approach. And the reason why I love Faith's approach is because sometimes when we think about inclusion and accessibility, we think of the one person, like, like the disabled person. We think about the, that one person who's like, hey, I need that. No, she looks at it from a whole team perspective, because that's how you do and create that inclusion. What does everybody on the team need in order to thrive? And Angelique Lucas, she's focusing on team strength. So like we can look at all of these different aspects. I love that we have this component for people who are building teams or who are part of teams, and they can come together. We have our keynote speakers. Katrina Young is a fantastic business strategist. She's working primarily in STEM, and she's from the UK. So she's going to come and talk about really changing. She's kicking it off. She's talking about changing the face of business and what that looks like for her. We have Sydney Marr, who's a multi-passionate entrepreneur. You know Sydney.
I know Sydney.
Sydney, there's nothing Sydney can't do. She has a wellness line of supplements. She is a business strategist as well. And she has her own clothing design company right now. She also has a face mask company that is taking over the world and is a fantastic leader. So she's going to talk about bringing your idea to reality. And then our third keynote is Kimra Luna, who is also a multi-passionate strategist. Right now, she's actually working on a food truck, but she is also an incredibly well-renowned business strategist. She works with people all around the world to create healthy businesses where they are. I could go on. We have 50 plus speakers, and they range everything from your social media, your search engine optimization. But then we're getting into some of the conversations like, what does writing about yourself really look like? We have writers who are coming, copywriters who are coming to talk about how to build actually your core story. We have the person who's doing search engine optimization is also a magician. And so he's combining the magic of SEO, which I love. I just love the creativity that has come out where people said, okay, actually, how do I combine my passions and create something even more spectacular? We have wellness. We have Catherine Creighton Cook, who is going to be helping us stretch and move and have better posture. We have Katsumi Sakamoto, who is from Brazil, and he is going to be talking about cellular nutrition for more productivity and just a better way. So it's a really well-rounded conference where we have a little bit of everything, but it is all focused on nourishing the business and nourishing the business owner while trying out new methods and new techniques for growing and helping your business thrive.
Honestly, it sounds as though we could throw away a lot of the courses that people are selling and just have people go to this conference. That's amazing.
Yes. And that's the difference between this and I think other conferences or summits that you might find out there is that this is actual takeaway. So one of the things I asked when the speakers applied is, what are the 3 action things that your audience is going to take away? So each one of them outlined the new idea, the new process, the new content piece, the new strategy, the new tactic. Everybody had this single point where you could literally take it away and implement it in your business. So it isn't just these high level kind of, some of these summits are really, and some of these like summits are really just promotional commentary. Yeah. This is actual training. This is actual networking. We do have some networking sessions where you will randomly put in with another participant and get to know them and find some collaboration points. There is, collaboration rooms where you can go in and meet. We have an expo hall where we have vendors who are there doing demonstrations, doing live coaching, working with their products, doing demos, showing off what they do so people can go in and talk. And that's the other thing. This is on the Hop-In platform, which is a really innovative online event software. So you don't have to download anything. You just need a browser and you can come in, you can actually come up on stage, put on your video, put on your audio, ask the question to the person. There's some workshops going on. So it really is just a different way of connecting with people that allows you to be engaged. It allows you to have your questions heard and answered. And I would love to see some collaborations and connections come out of these conferences that really improve the lives and business of the participants.
I don't have any question that is going to happen. No question. All right. So is there anything that you would like to convey at last?
No, I hope that people who are listening to this do find ways to find connection and collaboration. It's something that is really important to me because I feel like when we're trying to do this ourselves, it doesn't work, and it's tough and it is burning us out. And so, if one thing that you can learn this year is to really learn how to ask for help and how to receive help. And I
Mm.
think this is something that we just all need to get better at, is that when someone says, "Hey, can I interview you so that you can talk about your business?" And I say, "Yes." Yeah, yes, that's amazing, right? Or, "Can I help you make this even better?" Yes. And it's getting used to that, because then we get better at offering better support to other people. And
Mhm.
then it becomes just a better world that we live in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's part of the great shift on the planet in general.
It is.
So thank you so much for coming on, Marissa. It's
Thanks
been
for
a
having
real pleasure. And we will make sure to drop the links for the conference. And if it's after the conference, I'm sure that you'll have all kinds of things going anyway. And do you
Yes.
want to just tell us the link verbally here also?
Yes. So you can find all the details at spring.createtherules.com or ctrspring.com. Just depends how your browser and what parts of the world it works. And we do have another conference in October. So if you're hearing this after the fact and you're like, "Oh, shoot, I missed it," that's okay. We will be planning, the theme for October will be creating a community of support, which is very still
Ooh,
in alignment
yay.
with what we were just talking about. And
Mhm.
so watch that space for speaker opportunities, as well as tickets coming up for that as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm sure we'll be talking in the future.
Thanks so much, Lisa.
You're welcome.